Councilmember Gunn.
Not really sure exactly what kind of questions to have, other than maybe the committee can address some of the concerns they had and why they thought maybe we needed the legal counsel, so that way we understand, because I understand the need of separation, I just don't understand what are some of the issues that you guys found that we might need an attorney for separating.
So, as far as like the interlocal agreements that we're going to be probably looking at with Auburn, King County, and Federal Way as far as assistance in some of these areas, and our city attorney could probably work on those things. There's probably going to be some issues or some potential issues with personnel, maybe, or I'm trying to think of the things that we had discussed that we felt was totally out of the realm, that it was really safer to be error on the side of caution, so that, because one thing we have to keep in mind that Luce is also the mayor's attorney, and so some advice that he may give us on some procedures that we want to move forward with, or we might want to see or do, could be a conflict for him to advise us on, because it could go against the city or the mayor.
So, are we talking about just through today's date through the 9th of July then, for the certification? Or are we looking at possibly additional usage? And, so are we looking at a retainer and at will, contracting out?
And that was one of the things, and I'll answer this and then I'll turn it over to Josh, as part of the committee and what we were looking at when discussing this. Some of the stuff that we were looking at is, okay, what happens July 9th? Okay, and what things are in place? What things have come up that have to be followed through? I mean, I don't know if we can say July 9th you're done. It's going to be as needed basis, and that was why when I sent this information out, I was hoping to get a little bit of feedback. And then in my email, I asked, do we want to put a cap on this? Do we want to assign a point person? And I never heard any feedback from anybody. And it would be kind of a case-by-case basis, I think, as things came up. Mostly right now, I think our biggest concern was the mayor is still in office until the 9th. We need a point person to direct our questions and get answers back to council without creating a quorum or, a violation of open meetings act. And so that was one of the things that was suggested for us to have an avenue, and it doesn't put our current attorney in a situation, well, I can't really answer that because now it could be a conflict kind of thing. So it's kind of just our own separate to get through the transition and to handle any issues that might come up, because we don't know what all could come up between now and the 9th. We don't know if we're still going to need assistance, maybe through the 15th. We don't know. We don't know what we're looking at. We're just preparing ourselves and making sure that we take care of. The number one thing is to protect the city, and that's the whole goal, is to protect the city and to do things above board and be within compliance with the law. And go ahead, Josh.
My thought on the timeline there is certification of the results would make the recall effective, but at that point we don't yet have a new mayor. We've got the mayor pro tem acting as mayor, and that raises additional legal issues that I would say we would at least keep on independent counsel until council has appointed a new mayor, assuming the recall passes. And at that point, the new mayor would be in a position to address management vacancies in the city, any restructuring in the city, anything like that, so that there could develop a good internal team within the city. So yeah, this is just a transition during that period where we have we've had some positions have been vacant for 18 months. Some of them have only been off and on vacant, but there's all sorts of problems that we don't know what the problems are because we haven't had reports on them.
And just to add my 2 cents here, the way that the current engagement letter is drafted, and we're free to revise it however you see fit, but the way it's currently drafted and what we propose to provide to the city is legal services on an as-needed basis. So there won't be any monthly retainer, for example, or flat fee, for instance. It really, truly is. If you need us, we're here to help, but otherwise we won't bill you.
It's been a few days. I did read it.
There's no
other days on my
Josh, thank you for articulating that. That's better than I did.
But I didn't know what exactly to ask, you know, as far as, okay, thank you.
And it might be helpful to, and one of you kick me or throw something, this conversation might be most helpful if it's given in context of kind of the larger, some of the stuff that the committee's been talking about, particularly as that transition happens.
Will it fall within the realm of the special meeting?
I think so, because was that different than what I have?
No.
I just want to be sure.
I think so because the usefulness of outside counsel, I think, is mostly relevant when we talk to, frankly, getting back to your question. Some of the things that the committee thought that the most immediate needs that we would need assistance, expert bodies in-house right here to help the city transition through certainly things like the assistance of a city clerk while we post and get candidates for a city clerk position. Certainly, as Josh talked about, I think it's reasonable to expect that legal questions, frankly, complaints that maybe folks might not have been comfortable bringing them forward under the current administration may come out on the 9th or the couple of days after that. Some HR issues certainly is a big deal that I think that we'll have. And so the committee's talked about, can we line up those agreements and borrow staff from other local agencies, have that all lined up and ready to go once July 9 hits, again, assuming that the recall does pass, which it looks like it's going to, then we've got this agreement gives us the ability to have non-conflicted, completely independent, no, I don't want to say baggage because that gives it an unintended context to it, but no previous involvement with the city that can help us get through some of those things. So when the transition hits, we're good to go, ready to move forward.
Yeah, this provides, there are a number of issues I think we're all familiar with where some city officials and employees have claimed that the city attorney is not the city attorney or is representing only the council and not other functions of the government. And this would provide an absolutely new outside representation with no appearance of prior conflict on any of these issues. That it would ensure the appearance of fairness in addition to actually being useful legal advice.
Except, I'm going to assume this will be the council's representation, not the city's representation?
So the council approves contracts on behalf of the city.
No, I'm asking.
So this assumes that the recall passes, that the mayor pro tem is in fact a council member as well as the mayor pro tem. So yeah, it would be controlled by, it's a contract controlled by council.
And I think it would be advice given to council, and somebody correct me here if the intent is different, not intending Pacifica to be a second city attorney, but a legal resource giving legal advice to the council about how we move forward, how we transition, and frankly, a lot of that will come to me as that transition happens.
The only reason I'm bringing this up is because if we're hiring her firm as a representative, who is she representing? Is it specifically the council? Because if we go broader, when we go city, that thus falls under that would be the mayor in that transition period. Then we fall back into the conflict that we have with our existing council. So, again, contractually, who's hiring? I know contractually we approve it, but who are we hiring her firm to represent or provide us information? And it sounds like we're talking about the council.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I don't know if it exactly says it this way in there, but the only time when we would really need an attorney other than the city attorney is when that conflict exists between representing the mayor and the current administration and representing the council's legitimate interest in the smooth transition. So if the engagement is to represent the city where there is a potential conflict of interest with the existing attorney, then then she is representing the city, but only in those cases where the city attorney can't do it, which would be, in essence, representing council, yeah.
Fine
If
line.
that's enough circles. to
Fine
say.
line, but, because, again, where is the line wrong? If you open it up a little broader, she's gonna end up there, firm's gonna end up being in the same position. So we gotta think about what is it specifically.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that in terms of who is the client is the city. We would represent the city, but we'd be representing the city through and responding to you and going through the city council as the legislative authority of the city. And so it is our intent that we're only acting in this capacity. We would not represent the mayor on a personal basis or any issues associated with the recall or the mayor's current status, except for those related to moving on to the transition for the new mayor pro tem and the mayor position going forward.
She could still be required to deal with the mayor's specific issues in the next 14 days, if she's gonna represent the city.
But we would go through and we would receive our direction from the council and the representative as appointed to the council, as elected to the council.
Keep going, go ahead.
Then you're not a lawyer, but I do work with words, and you gotta think about what you're writing down, because she's representing the city, you can't get her, it's not just the council. Okay? She represents the council as far as, we have a contract with her firm, the council establishes contracts so that we can deal with transitional issues, narrow it out, and then, so that the mayor can't call up her firm and ask, and we end up having, she represents the city, she's gonna have to answer that question.
I think that's the difference between a city attorney and a contract with a law firm that's not the city attorney.
Yeah, the engagement agreement would specify the scope of her work and who she reports to. Again, she'd be representing the city on the matters covered by the engagement.
To me, it's very similar, and maybe that's the issue, is we need very similar to what we had to do when we had to hire an outside firm to represent us when the mayor had taken the lawsuit issue. So we need to make sure that that's the contractual structure of this agreement. That falls in the same route.
Yes, that was one of the concepts that inspired the
Okay, so
desire to look for.
I'm done now.
Councilor Holden.
Having been represented by the dumbest attorney in the world at one point in my life, I never value good legal advice, sound legal advice. My concern is perception. And we have a city attorney to represent the city, which we are a part of. And we, as council, represent the citizens of this city. If we narrow the scope of this contract to just transitional issues, we might be all right. But on the other hand, there's going to be citizens out there that are saying, well, the council needs their own attorney. What have they been doing? They need their own attorney.
I just do want to add, just, and this may be, mentioning something that you are fully aware of, but cities with city attorneys frequently hire outside counsel, and for special projects for one reason or another, capacity issues, legal expertise, just for a whole variety of reasons. And so the reason why we wrote the letter in kind of a broad, generic, characterize ourselves as outside special legal counsel to the city is just to make it clear that this is for special projects and not to serve in the role of city attorney. So, and it sounds like that was okay with the city attorney.
Councilor Stipes.
Well, basically, what we're doing here is
what's happened with the recall and everything else, the council is reaching out to get council consulting firm to consult the council on the decisions through this various things. So I think that has got us covered because it's strictly consulting us on our actions to make sure we make proper actions through the transition here of the mayor pro tem, the new mayor assignments, and everything else that's going to be coming up. Because, use for example right now, that in the event, say, the present mayor does not come back, and a personnel issue comes up. Okay, right now, the mayor pro tem is just an acting mayor pro tem because he's out of town. An acting mayor pro tem because he's out of town, you cannot handle any personnel issues, hiring, firing, or anything. You have no control of anything else. You cannot involve in any contracts or anything like this. So, we are in limbo. So now we need to go to our consulting firm and ask them, how do we handle this? It's something we've got to make immediate attention to, but yet we can't. Like, how do we go about it? So we got to be directed in the right direction, or we're going to make huge mistakes, then we're opening ourselves and everything else up to possible legal abuse. And so I think if we word it this way, and that this, we are not entering in, the council is entering into a contract, not the city. So it's the same as when we brought Luce back as the city attorney, but he was under the city council, not under the city. Because if this firm is brought in under the city, legally you cannot sign the contract.
Actually, the council directs who signs the contract. We can appoint anybody that we choose. We can have somebody from out of town sign a contract. But the mayor pro tem has all the authority of the mayor, except that he cannot hire or fire into the office. Other than that, in absence of the mayor or in inability of the mayor to perform his duty, the mayor pro tem has full authority.
I guess I know where we're going. I know, I think, where we want to go. I'm just a little concerned about the language in the contracts, a little generic, a little general for what we really should be saying. And maybe what we need to have is, unfortunately, Mr. Luce isn't here, but what we did when we had the other previous special counsel contracted represent the city, you know. Even though that was representation of the city, but I think you're right, that we need to narrow this down. Is this open for everybody? I mean, their consultation, or is it just for the council to understand and ask questions and get answers independent in relationship to the transition? You know, so that our city attorney doesn't have to deal with a conflict of interest. I think that's what we're talking about. I think then if that's the case, then we need to change the language slightly to reflect that.
I don't know who this first, Councilor Sykes.
Well, we're sitting here, we're talking around circles here of how to do this and how to do that, and we have a representative of a legal firm standing right here, that, why don't you tell us how to word it? I mean, here we are trying to be attorneys, and we got one standing right here. I mean, let's get her advice on how to legally make this so we can, she knows now what we want to accomplish, so tell us how we have to word it to accomplish it.
Wouldn't be a council meeting if we didn't ignore the advice of the attorney.
Well, I want to home.
So I'll go Councilmember Steiger, and I'll come back and see if we got some advice. Or, I'm sorry, Paul Bowlesy.
My concern is hire an attorney to just represent the council. We're spending money that is not necessarily for the good of the city. It is indirectly, but it's for the benefit of the council only. And I'm concerned that that might be misappropriation.
Member Guy.
That's not our intent, and what's been stated
I
more than one
understand.
time.
Ah.
And so, okay. What we need to do is we need sound advice to move to this transition period without putting our existing city attorney in a bad situation. That's the whole intent. The whole idea of this is a special service contract to get us through the transition. It's not to take care of every little thing that pops up in the city. We have an attorney for that. This is the whole idea of this. It was strongly recommended by the SBA, you know, and in speaking with other cities, you know, is this what you would do kind of thing, and they strongly advise that it's sound advice for the council to follow that advice just for this transition, just for this project. It's like a special project, just like when we had the civil service, we had to hire an outside attorney just for that situation, and it's kind of like exactly the same thing. I mean, in my mind, we're just trying to make sure we do the right thing to move forward. We're going to have interlocal agreements coming up that we're going to want sound advice on those, on moving forward, and it's just to move the city forward, to get through the transition. And that's all we were seeking. And
Councilmember Button.
I think we're conflating two separate issues here. One is who is the client, and the other is what is the scope of work. The client is the city as a whole. The scope of work is advising the council on transition issues. The public interest in that is that we have a $500,000 per claim self-insured retention on our wrongful acts liability, which would pay for an awful lot of attorney hours. If we avoid any one claim on that, we more than pay for the attorney fees to the advantage of the whole city, because that's not coming out of council's budget, that's coming out of the public's budget if we have to pay a claim.
I understand your concern. We just need to word it appropriately. The mayor had good intentions when he took office, but the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. And I want to make sure that we do things correctly, not well intended.
My recommendation would be to actually echo exactly what you said. The client would be the city. We are acting in a limited capacity with respect to the next X number of months to serve and to provide legal advice in connection with a very small, my impression is a very small, limited scope of work. So if we can add a sentence to the first paragraph of our engagement letters, or if you would like to attach a scope of work to the back, we'd be happy to do either one. Sketch it out right now. I can, we have a number of different options. We can get approval to move forward, subject to fulfilling or doing a scope of work with whoever you decide to assign to that task. But we can revise the letter, but in terms of who the client is, it really truly would be the city acting in this very limited capacity.
At the direction of whomever council.
Exactly. Yes, and as legislative body of the council, of the city, we would be acting at your direction, and anyone specific that you direct us to communicate with.
Councilmember Walker.
I think I know the answer to this already, but have we looked at the professional services perspective to see where we're at? And where this is going to come from?
Special services, what?
We can.
Money?
We can tell you, actually, how much revenues we've had and what our expenses are for the period, and yes, we do need an adjustment on a number of items, but the balances forward have not yet begun for this year because 2012 is not yet closed out. We don't know where we are for a balance sheet, but we do know cash flow is okay. Revenues in many areas are coming in ahead of forecast. Expenses on some items are up, but on other items are down. the net is, we've had about 3.3 million of revenue year-to-date and about 2.8 million of expenses year-to-date. So, we don't know the balances in any of the accounts, but we know there's still money in the bank.
I asked that question the other day, and they told me we still had check lines.
Further remarks?
I'm still leery, not from her firm, or where our intention is from this, but as a representative of the city, I mean, if someone chooses during this time to seek their legal counsel, they can. Not, how would you control it?
That would be within the scope of work that they are representing, they are working only on issues as assigned to them by whoever our point of contact is.
It's not
If-
written in this language, that's the point.
We can fix that.
If the, yeah, yeah, so if the mayor called up with a question, she would say, that is not within my scope of work, you need to contact the city attorney. Yeah.
Again,
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all coalescing around the same concept.
Okay. Can I throw out a sentence here just for your consideration? So in the first paragraph, adding a new separate sentence after we characterize ourselves as outside special legal counsel to the city, we say, in such capacity, we understand that we are to provide legal advice with respect to the transition period resulting from the recall of the mayor's son, and other matters as directed by the city council or its designee.
I think that covers it.
Narrows it right down.
I wasn't the one arguing it.
I'm not. Read it again. I'm sorry.
In such capacity, we understand that we are to provide legal advice with respect to the transition period resulting from the recall of Mayor's son and other matters as directed by the city council or its designee. My
You
only,
probably should identify the designee. You know.
I think that's something council would do if we ended up
Okay.
taking action on a motion. We would designate.
Did you have a comment you were gonna say?
I was going to say, if there's a different way to phrase the transition period, given that it's limiting and also a little broad all at the same time, if there are other matters, I'm trying to think of if there's, if the state auditor needs to talk to somebody, for example, and you want someone outside, I guess that would be a transition issue. I'm trying to think of everything that could fall within the scope.
And you have the second piece of that sentence.
Okay.
Member Guy.
Any other issues, just to be clear with all of council, the other issues would be whoever, there was agreed upon council for that designated person to address the law, correct? That wouldn't be addressed until it went through the designated person after being agreed upon by council. Or would you just, the designated person, just make that decision?
I think that might depend on who the designated person was and what their status was at the time. If the designated person is, we've appointed a new mayor who wants to continue the transition work for a while, and that person is the mayor, I would give the mayor authority to ask such questions if necessary without them having to come back to council. I think that keeps it cleaner as far as legislative versus executive. If it's one of us is temporarily the point person because James is pro tem and he's out of town, then I think, yeah, you'd want to talk it over first to make sure it's really something you want to spend attorney fees on.
And I do have to add to that, though, that if there are certain matters that you know are going to be coming up in the next 3 weeks, for example, 3 weeks, month, 2 months, it would probably be helpful from our perspective as well as yours, just to make sure that that person is actually within the scope of their authority to really understand what that scope is, so we don't have to wait for a city council meeting, or hold a special meeting, for the sake of reviewing a contract, for example, that needs to be executed right away.
Other remarks? Is there a motion to be made?
Move to approve the contract as amended.
Been moved by Councilmember Putnam, second by Councilmember Guyer to approve the letter of engagement as amended, as presented as amended. Councilmember Putnam.
I think we clearly do need outside legal advice for a number of issues. We've used outside counsel before during the past year. There is precedent for this. They're a firm that's experienced in doing this. Well, no one is experienced in doing exactly what we're doing now. That's one of the reasons we need outside counsel. I can't count how many times during the past year MRSC's legal counsel has said, "That's fascinating. It's entirely novel. This has never come up in state history before. I don't know. Let me know how it turns out."
I think he worked for me.
Well, these are people with 30 years' experience researching Washington municipal law, and they don't know because they can't find records that it ever happened before in state history. So we don't know for sure what all the issues are, but there are going to be issues where we're going to need fast, professional, competent legal advice that doesn't put anybody into a conflict of interest position.
Councilmember Guyer.
It's exactly my feeling of why, seeking outside advice, because nobody has encountered this situation before. This is a totally new situation to our own city attorney and to outside agencies that we have gone to. The number one advice is coming back to independent counsel to do this so that there isn't a conflict of interest and that we are protecting the city at the utmost possibility that we can.
Further remarks? Councilmember Walker.
Do you want to add designee to this?
The designee, and also authorize someone to sign the engagement letter also.
I'd like to amend the motion, make a motion to amend, add James McMahon to the designee, and authorize him to sign the contract.
Second.
You don't get it.
It's been moved and to amend the motion to authorize Councilmember McMahon as the point of contact and sign for the letter of engagement. Councilmember Walker, your motion to amend.
I give it to Guyer in a second.
Okay. Councilmember Guyer, speak to your second.
I think you're the right person for the job.
Councilmember Holden.
The train is about 20 minutes ahead of time.
Further remarks? Question before the council is a motion by Councilmember Walker, second by Councilmember Guyer, to amend the motion to designate Councilmember McMahon as the authorized signer for the contract and a point of contact for the physical lawsuit under the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion to audience remarks, thank you.
On the amendment,
On the motion to amend.
we agree.
Sure. I just think it's no, really?
The microphones are important.
Oh, God.
If there's ever a question of what goes on in one of these meetings, they need to be able to get it off the audio to...
Yeah, 'cause I'm not loud enough.
We need cordless mics back here.
Well,
Let me get out of your way.
You're speaking
One-
on the amendment, right?
yeah, one of the
I
transition
was
items
gonna talk
is...
about, please, they're coming back.
They are coming.
I know. I just wanted Katie Garberding, 366 White River Drive, got it, to say that as a citizen, I think this is a really good way to protect everyone involved, and that way, if questions come up, you're covered. So kudos to, is it Leanne that came up with this idea to hire outside counsel?
So is this a motion on the modification?
To all of it. It's a great idea. That's it.
Thank you. Don, speaking on the motion to amend.
To amend.
To amend. Oh, I did that, didn't I?
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I'm on 416 Second Avenue. Instead of legal counsel, would it be, I don't know what the definitions are legally, but would it be legal guidance in transition?
Good question. Let's get through the motion to amend it, and maybe we'll address that. Councilmember Pleasant, do you have a remark?
I was just gonna say that's not germane to the motion to amend.
Question before the council is a motion by Councilmember Walker, seconded by Councilmember Guyer to amend the motion to designate Councilmember McMahon as the authorized signer and employment contract for the letter of engagement. Any further remarks? Those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.